Well, earlier this week, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister and indeed Celebrity Mastermind contestant David Lammy announced that half of all jury trials were to be scrapped. This is his plan to tackle the Crown Court backlog. I would ask a big question about whether that will actually help in terms of the Crown Court backlog being dealt with, because there's so many problems in Crown Courts and Magistrates Courts, and a number of people have been in touch with me this week to just outline the problem, and one of them is Michael Shilladay, who's a barrister I know. We're going to talk in a second to Sir Michael Ellis, who is the former Attorney General, but I want to get the view kind of from the coalface from Michael. First of all, thanks for joining us. Michael, you represent people all the time in all sorts of different courts. Can you just tell me what it's like? Because some of the stories are not really about juries, they're about all sorts of things, about not having prisoners in court because there aren't enough vans to transport them, photocopiers not working. Tell me what it's like in the front line there as you try to represent your clients and get justice.
In about an hour, I'm going to leave here and go to, as it happens, my local Crown Court and do a hearing there this afternoon. That court is fairly notorious for custody trials where the defendant is not on bail, being delayed significantly because the boiler doesn't work and the cells are too cold and prisoners can't be transported from prison to that court. It's not only that court where that is a significant problem. Photocopiers not working is something that happens in all walks of life, but it does slow things down. In fact, the criminal justice system is not very paper-based at all anymore, but there are some things that you must have paper for, and photocopiers not working is one of the many problems. Maidstone Crown Court has or at least used to have a problem with the gents' toilet leaking onto the jury box in one of the courts. The justice budget, the MOJ budget, is in real terms adjusted for inflation, 20% less now than it was in 2010. The entire court estate, the entire justice budget has been starved of funding for longer than I've been in practice. In 2019, the Crown Court backlog was, I think, about 40,000 cases. The Bar Council expressed concern about that. The senior presiding judge of England and Wales wrote back and said this is a political decision. The then Conservative government had taken the political decision to reduce sitting days in order to keep the Crown Court backlog where it was, because at that stage they were anticipating reduced receipts into the Crown Court. In fact, what happened was 6 months later we had a pandemic and the backlog exploded. The backlog is now twice what it was then. There are courts in London which are currently setting trials for 2030. So the short answer to the question is, are these reforms going to make a dent in the backlog? Is one, probably not, and two, even if they do, it's not going to be for years. I don't think there's any court, I could be wrong, I don't think there's any court in the Southeastern Circuit in the southeast of England and Wales, where trials are currently being listed, certainly bail trials, within a reasonable period. You're talking at least 2027. So what's being proposed is tinkering with ancient rights to trial by jury, sort of on the recommendation of Sir Brian Levison, who incidentally was clearly chosen for a reason. Sir Brian has been expressing his own particular niche, if I may say so, view about the right to trial by jury since at least 2015. His selection for that review wasn't an accident. When in fact there are many things that could be done that will reduce the backlog much quicker.
So give us a few examples.
They range from just releasing the cap on sitting days. Snaresborough Crown Court in East London is one of the biggest criminal trial centres in Europe. I think there's one in Germany that's bigger. It's got 20 courts. The Old Bailey is smaller. I don't think in my entire career I've ever seen all 20 courts sitting with a judge all day.
So we've got a situation then where if you are unfortunate enough, or by your own actions, you're caught up in this system. We have people who, we've got people who are victims of rape. We've got people who have had a murder in the family who are waiting for justice for years because of really quite basic things, Michael.
Yeah, I think would be unusual for a murder trial to be listed that far in advance.
But there are lots of trials that are taking an awfully long period of time.
My professional diary is, it has trials in it in 2028, 2029.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And there are basic things, but it all comes down, certainly in the short term, to money. There are many other things the government could do to sort this out. What's good for society is terrible for my ability to make money. And the worst thing that the government could do to for my ability to make money is actually address the causes of crime.
Okay.
Most of what I do,
and that's a whole other discussion we will. And that's a whole other discussion we will perhaps have on a later date. Michael, thank you. That's Michael Shilladay, who's a barrister. I want to go to Sir Michael Ellis now, who is a KC, King's Counsel, a barrister and former Attorney General. Sir Michael, thank you for joining us. Does that ring true with what you have heard, seen and experienced yourself? And what do you think that the government can do to change things? I mean, is getting rid of jury trials going to help this at all?
Well, this is another mastermind decision from David Lammy. Look, the fact is it's not going to affect the backlog. And it is interfering in a very serious way with 800 years of jurisprudence, frankly, of the rights of the people of this country, which were exported to democracies around the world and which remain today as fundamental as they have ever been. We need juries very often to inject common sense into decisions, to look at things with a broad aspect, with a human, if you like, aspect, as opposed to a robotic process where lawyers might take a view that something is worthy of prosecution. Juries will inject common sense. Now, what your previous guest was saying is absolutely right. The pressures on the criminal justice system in this country are serious. They are really serious. In fact, I would say there's an emergency in our criminal justice system. The delays are unconscionable. The prison estate is also falling apart, by the way, because of lack of investment. And this is a 30-year issue. This is not for the last 5 minutes.
I mean, it's a 30-year issue, and your party was in government for 14 years, surely. And I was a special advisor in the Ministry of Justice for 6 months. I mean, yes. All these people, I have my part to play in it as well. We were told time and time again, including by people like Michael Shilladay, who's been on at me for years about this, that yes. Literally the fabric of the courts is falling apart.
Yes, look, there are 3 reasons really why there's a backlog. I mean, part of it is due to COVID and what happened to the system there. But the real reasons for the backlog, there are 3 of them. The first is that there is a lack of court sitting days. In other words, each day that a Crown Court judge sits with a jury has to be funded, and there's an allocation of sitting days set by the government in order to fund that. And that's expensive. I don't know what the current daily rate for a Crown Court is. The last I heard, it was about £10,000 a day.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
So where we are really is a lack of sitting days. So as your previous guest was eloquently saying, you'll get some court buildings with 20 courts in it, and he's never seen all 20 courts sitting at the same time.
Yes.
I have similar experiences pre-2010, by the way. So that's one issue, the lack of sitting days. Another issue is the dilapidated court estate. That's a generation or more of underfunding so that heating doesn't work and plumbing doesn't work and things don't work that mean that you can't sit in court on that day. That's another reason for delays. And a third reason, which is a bit harder to deal with, is the increased complexity, Peter, of court cases, mostly because of the digital evidence. There's so much more digital evidence now, even on an ordinary burglary. There may be CCTV footage in 10 houses in the street.
Yeah, ring doorbells and putting it all together. Yeah,
all that sort of thing.
It's a complex picture, and you've illustrated it well. Thank you, Sir Michael Ellis, there, barrister himself, King's Counsel and former Attorney General. Appreciate you joining us on the programme.